Welcome back, everyone, to a very special edition of 411 Now. Today, I am joined by my lovely wife, and today we are going to be discussing Lori and Chad and their relationship with the LDS Church and their extremist views. Thank you for joining us today. First, let's take a look at the LDS Church and Lori and Chad's relationship with the LDS Church, the Church of Latter Day Saints, Jesus Christ Latter Day Saints. When it comes to the LDS Church, the there are not one but 11 different total references in the Mormon Bible and the teachings of and the LDS Church about white and delightsome people, that they strive to be a white and delightsome people for the church and for their religion in itself. Starting in the 1970s, the Church of Latter day Saints decided that they needed to distance themselves from a white only church and become more integrated. It wasn't until 20 plus years later, 1997, that the LDS Church decided that they were finally at that point, completely integrated. While this was all going on, before 1997, those who were African American, Latino, Asian American were not allowed to hold higher positions within the actual church. They weren't allowed to be priests. They weren't allowed to have hold certain offices within the church. The elders within the church themselves didn't allow it, and still to this day, to a large extent, but not as publicized, the elders within the actual LDS Church have that same kind of view. They believe that this is the actual works of Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith meant everything that was written down in his book and his actual scriptures. So they follow these practices to this day. But as like I said, in 1997, they said they were finally done with integration for all races within the LDS Church.
So, is was that official church doctrine then?
That
To move away from the rather blatantly racist idea.
I don't think it was something that the church wanted to do. See, you have to look at the history of the LDS Church. In the early years, while they needed people to help build and spread the word of their church, to grow their parishioners and base, they allowed African Americans and Latinos especially to become members, but they became, and I hate to say this, but they became more of an indentured servant to the church, where they gave tithings. They were asked to do an extraordinary amount of actual physical work to help build their actual physical buildings, and then in turn they said that they were meant to believe that they were on the same equal level as everybody else, but they never were, because the elders looked down upon them, because again, in the conservative, those who are conservative, and building this church, believed that these were the actual words, and the meaning behind these words are white only. And full, release here, I want to make sure that everybody understands that in complete clarity here. This isn't just the LDS Church. You know, all kinds of religions have had pretty much the same doctrine over time, they didn't encourage other people of other races to become full parishioners within their church. And this is something that was very well became publicized in the 1970s for the LDS Church, and it kind of gave them a black eye. And they tried to turn it around as quickly as they possibly could, and it completely integrate. But there are people who are going to be, who go by the Bible word for word and believe everything that's in there, and they will not, veer off of what is actually in the book. Then there are people who take it and it's like, okay, it's this is just a basic understanding. Be nice to your neighbor. Don't screw around with people. Morals of life. Teachings. And somewhere in between there was where the elders fell, and where they had to rectify their understandings of the church and their teachings to actually really incorporate people of color and different ethnicities into their church.
Didn't the LDS Church have a big hand in kidnapping children of indigenous
Yes, they did.
Americans?
Yes, during the expansion of the West, they kidnapped them and then forced them to go back to re-education camps, basically.
I seem to recall reading something about that. Yeah.
And they forced them to give up their complete heritage and who they were and of everything about them, and forced them to learn a Christian faith. And they brainwashed these children in believing that everybody back home were a bunch of Neanderthals. They were behind the times, and they were never going to be right. That was a very dark period in American history, not only for the LDS Church, but for Americans in general, because we allowed it to happen. The U.S. government saw it happening. We allowed it to happen, and in some instances, we actually gave them land to build these re-education classes, and we, schools, boarding schools and stuff, and we put up security so the natives couldn't come and get their own children back.
I don't think it was just a U.S. thing, too. I think Canada had an issue with the children of indigenous peoples being stolen, and it's still an issue that I believe is, not necessarily LDS Church, but it's still an issue that we have echoes of today, where children of native peoples are given to families outside of their culture for adoption and for fostering and stuff like that. So
it still happens to this very day on the Pine Reservation, I believe they're in North Dakota, and indigenous children and women in particular vanish from there all the time, and then they're found in northern Chicago or Memphis, Tennessee, years later, but they just vanish from the reservation. There are reservations here in America. Unfortunately, still we have reservations, but this is a side note, that still don't have running water, electricity, nothing. And the U.S. government would like you to believe that these people are just a bunch of backwards people and don't want these services. They have begged for these services since the treaties were set up and actually put them onto their land. Worthless land where nothing will grow. If you can't grow agriculture on it, you can't raise animals on it, you can't get anything to grow at all to sustain life. But we've put these people there, and we forced them, into a life of basic, it's a third world country within our own. But that's a complete side note altogether. It's just horrible what we've done to them, and we're still doing it to this day. But I want to talk, keep this more on race and relationships and the church. And now I want to move on to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and their beliefs in actual separation of different races and how they wanted to set up their religious groups and inner circles.
So were their beliefs then influenced heavily by the LDS church?
Oh yes, they both grew up pretty much in the LDS church, and then Lori kind of as she became an adult after her first marriage, and between her second and third, and as her subsequent marriages, she stopped believing in a lot of the teachings that she had.
Can I ask you a question, hon?
Huh.
I don't, I don't watch your channel.
Right.
How many times was she married?
Uh, Total 4.
So maybe just like a paperwork issue or
If
something like
if
that.
you count them all, I do believe that there are, it's either 4 or 5. Depending on how you count it. She had some relationships. That she spoke to friends about. This guy that I got kind of hooked up with, and and she's supposed to be in a Mormon, and this is not something that a Mormon is supposed to be doing, going out and having these flings. But then again, stalking a man who was married to a woman, and then the wife mysteriously dies, and then you have your brother kill, your husband, so you don't have to lose all your stuff in a divorce. Yeah, that's kind of against the teachings of the Bible as well. But
I mean, is it though?
well, yeah, and then having your children murdered, and buried on a farm in Salem, Idaho.
Yeah, that's some fucked up shit.
There's a lot of stuff that is just shit crazy about this lady, and this guy, and Chad Daybell. I mean, they're just nuts. And if you really go down this rabbit hole trying to understand these two people, you could really get lost. It's really easy because there are so many branches off of this that each of them have taken. Lori, for instance, and I want to start with her. Lori, while she was married to Joseph Ryan, and Joseph would be either husband number 2 or 3, depending on how you look at the entire thing. But Joseph Ryan, while she was married to him, she started to have, from the outside looking in on her and her actual religious beliefs and her extremism, is when it really started to boil. And she started to see that if she stuck to a certain part, she gravitated to a certain part of the Bible and the Book of Mormon. If she gravitated to that part of it and learned and repeated everything about it, and then she rehashed it whenever it came up, she noticed that people paid attention to her. So then she started expanding that to entire books within it all together, and then she started to learn everything about it and everything she could, and then she started using her own, picking her own ideas from here and there and integrating them into it, and then holding small prayer groups, study groups around the Book of Mormon and the book of the Holy Bible, and not necessarily the Old Testament, but the New Testament only. And she would hold these groups, and then she would integrate her own beliefs on top of it, which drew in people to her. And the more people who showed up, the more people who paid attention, it built up her self worth, and she really dove in and doubled down on it as soon as people started paying her attention and saying, "Wow, you really know a lot about this." And then she started integrating her own little ideas on top of it all, and then grabbing stuff from this religion and from this religion and dragging them all in together and saying, "Well, what about this? What about reincarnation? What about taking that from this religion?" And then over here, she would take something from Native American spirituality of like the clouds and maybe peyote or whatever. I'm just giving it as an example. There's no evidence that she actually took peyote. She probably should have, because I really believe that when she was married to Joseph Ryan is when the mental health issues with her went off the rail and they're undiagnosed. And then she left that marriage and she got married to Charles Vallow, who was the next husband. And it just became more and more and more and more extreme. And while married to Charles Vallow, she started stalking Chad Daybell, the Doomsday author, who has a completely separate, different take on the Mormon religion and Christianity as a whole.
So his interpretation didn't match hers to begin with?
No, he's a Doomsday author, and he would eventually get to the point where he had a series of near-death experiences, and his
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because she seems a little. Were they because of her?
no. No, wouldn't that be cool if it was?
I'm just.
Yeah,
It seems like
yeah.
maybe.
No. He was married, raising his own family, and he was living in. I believe he was living in Idaho at the time. He might have been in Utah, and he was a gravedigger, and he had what he called a near-death experience, and he had a vision where he believed that God came to him in this near death experience. And then yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen.
But and he started to and God told him to write these visions down. To shut up and listen and write these visions down. I'm trying to teach you something. I'm trying to give you information. So, and as these visions progressed through time, he wrote them down, and he used that as the basis of his first couple of books. And his belief system was going along with the LDS Church, which took an abrupt turn right there.
What was the split?
For him, the near-death experiences.
No. I mean, what was the? Where did he start to veer?
And away from their teachings.
Yeah.
Well, he believed that he was a prophet.
Okay.
And that goes completely against the church's teachings. They don't believe that you can become a prophet just because you had a near-death experience. And it's one thing to say it in a forum, as in being interviewed by a reporter. It's another thing to write it down and put it in a book, and then without telling anybody from your church, and then your bishop finds out about it, and then they read about it that you are now saying that you are a prophet and a chosen one from Jesus Christ himself came to you and said, you're a man, I'm going to keep on coming to you through this porthole, and I'm going to give you information that nobody else has. The church kind of looked at it and said, you got to ease up on this stuff, man. You can't be doing this. And he didn't want to, because he was making money as this doomsday prophet.
As a point of clarity, how would one legitimize being a prophet? Isn't the nature of prophecy that it's a rather internal experience and not externally validated?
Yeah, you would think so. And that's a good question. But anyways, back to Lori. Lori's going off the rails, and she's been stalking Chad Daybell while she's married to her husband, Charles Vallow. And she went so far to make up, fake email account that made it look like that her husband, Charles, was actually writing to Chad and trying to coerce him from Idaho to their home in Arizona so he could write his next book, when it was actually Lori who was writing him all along. So she's married to Charles Vallow. She's writing to another man who's married to Tammy Daybell, who is trying to raise his family and go about his life. And here's this lady who's already got her eyes set on the next man in her life. She's already gotten, in her mind, Charles is in the background. She's already decided she's done with him. And she's moving on. And she's going like a heat-seeking missile for Chad. Which, if you put the picture of Charles Vallow next to Chad Daybell, you can clearly see that Charles, Vallow is a good-looking man. Chad looks like a freaking turtle.
That's mean.
I know, right? Why would you do that? Because it was someone who then gave her the knowledge and the admiration and gave her the credit that she deserved.
So
Because
she wasn't interested in
believed.
him as a romantic partner. She was interested, or because of his
No,
age.
no, she was interested in him as a romantic partner, and also he was somebody who gave her accreditation because she was already speaking and talking about the doomsday prophecies within the Mormon religion.
So I guess she wanted him as a stepping stone.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a good way to put it, because I really believe that once she was done with Charles, she was going to get rid of. I mean, once she was done with Chad, she was moving on. Every man in her life she has used to get to a certain position, and once she has gotten there, bye bye, moved on, and to the next one already, and you can see it all the way along the way, throughout her entire life. When you look at the entire picture and stand back and look at it all, like on that whiteboard over there, I put every one of these connections down, and you could see, you draw a line to each and every person and how they connect up. And when before she actually got involved with Chad Daybell, she was talking to people who were all the way around him. So she knew what was going on in his life, and then she started the fake email address directly to him, and then he thought he was writing back to Charles, her husband, who was inviting him to come down and write his book, but he wasn't at all. And she'd already set this thing up, and then she got her brother, to eventually kill her husband and get rid of him. And he probably had a hand in killing, Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, and he definitely had a hand in the murder of her two children. But
Her brother or Chad?
no, her Lori's brother. He was the enforcer of the entire thing.
I mean, I don't want to be an asshole to Chad because it sounds like he lost a whole lot. But if he was really a prophet, you think somebody would have given him the heads up that that was going to happen?
Well, he did.
Really?
Yeah, he's got a porthole. He's magical, and he's a prophet, and he can put a porthole anywhere that he wants, and through that porthole he can communicate on both sides of the veil of life, those who are here living and those who are deceased and on the other side of the veil. He can communicate freely through these portholes, but with this porthole, he can set up a porthole here, in our yard, and then talk to somebody across the street with no phone, nothing at all,
Oh,
or maybe
that's
across the country
super
through the
convenient.
porthole.
But no one on the other side of the veil tipped Chad off that somebody was going, that Lori was gunning for him?
What do you mean?
Well,
That she was looking to kill him?
yeah, I'm just saying.
Well, I don't think she got to that point yet. They had a doomsday prophecy that July 20th, between the July 20th of this year and July 25th, the world was going to end.
Okay, so it wasn't happening yet.
That was his prophecy that he kept on talking about. She talked about the end of life prophecy and the end of the world prophecy, which is taught in the Book of Mormon. That's why they stockpile food, and they take the measures they do, because the world is going to end, and when technology and society crumbles around them, and everybody's rushing out to try to get food, they have stockpiles of food in their homes, so they can survive long periods of like a drought or a catastrophe that would disrupt society. They can go on with their lives. This is why they stockpile this food for the end of the world.
I'd like to interject that if COVID taught us anything, it's that when people are stressed, they don't buy food, they buy toilet paper.
And a lot of hand cleaner.
So much.
A lot of hand cleaner and a lot of toilet paper. Yeah. So she'd already had this belief of the end of the world, and when she first became enamored with him, and before the email letters started going back and forth between her, the fake account, and Chad, she was actually into this prophecy already and talking about it within her inner circle of people she was teaching and holding religious studies with.
So is this world ending that was supposed to happen last month? Was that a common date for doomsday people in the
No.
LDS church, or did they
No,
just come by it?
Chat had a vision.
Chat had a vision.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first vision he had was that the world was supposed to end July 20th of 2020. And the way it was, there were a series of signs that were supposed to happen that showed, everybody who is in his circle of followers, people from the preparing people, and another voice of warning. These people believed that the world was going to end, and Chad told them there was a series of things that were going to happen. First, there was supposed to be a series of small earthquakes that were going to happen. Not enough to completely level the world or buildings or anything like that. Maybe buckle some roads. Just be a kind of a nuisance thing, but it'd be easily repaired and life would go on.
Isn't there seismic activity all over the world at any given time?
Yeah, but this was supposed to be, think about it. And you understand, like northern Idaho versus where a lot of people here probably who are going to watch this won't understand, but you understand for where your grandparents' home is, where an earthquake of about magnitude of like 3.0 wouldn't level a lot of stuff there.
Nah.
But it might maybe break up the blacktop, so it'd make it difficult to drive, to get anywhere. But just enough of a nuisance, but it could be quickly repaired. That was supposed to be the first signs. Other signs were supposed to be of an albino Kodiak bear was supposed to come out of the forest, and it was supposed to be shown. Everybody was going to see it. It was supposed to come out at a large event where people seen it.
That's highly specific.
Right. And well, there are no Kodiak bears in Idaho. And there are no albino Kodiak bears, but that was something that he had spoken with.
That's amazingly
directly
specific.
with the people. Another voice of warning, who is a friend of his, who posted a lot of these things on his website. He's since bleached this entire website and gotten rid of a lot of things that he had said. Where after Chad was arrested and Lori was arrested for after they found the kids. Yeah, this guy who runs that website, he went through and completely removed a lot of things from the website, where he was he talked about Chad is innocent and Chad would never do anything like this, and Chad this and Chad that, and Chad is the holy prophet that he speaks of. All that stuff is gone from that website. But instead, it's now more of a prepper's website than anything else. It talks about doomsday prophecy, but it's a prepper website now.
I don't understand. I just for a moment.
Go ahead.
I don't understand why people have to attach a doomsday prophecy to prepping. It just being prepared for emergencies seems like a good idea. Why do we have to add and Armageddon to the end of it?
Well, for some reason, a lot of people like to put them together. Those who believe in end of times prophecy, at the same time, kind of want to hedge their bets in case they don't die. They are like, well, you know what? I think it's going to happen. Maybe we should stockpile 300 cans of baked beans.
That seems like a lot of stress to put yourself under.
Well, people do it. I mean, Jerry Falwell is selling 5-gallon buckets of drool on TV every night. I thought people learned their lessons from Jerry Falwell a long time ago, along with Jim Baker is doing the same thing.
Was Jim Baker the one who got caught with all those prostitutes, or was that a different one?
I think he got caught with one. But his major downfall was stealing millions of dollars from his followers.
I don't think it's stealing if they give it to you.
Oh, yeah, I think you have to
Wasn't
account
that his
for
defense?
I don't. No, I can't remember what her name was, and it's not really important who she was. Jessica Hahn? No, it's something like that. I can't remember.
God, that name is super familiar. Why?
Yeah, I know, because that name just popped into my head for some reason. Maybe she was the one with Jerry Falwell. I can't remember. I mean, a lot of these televangelists who took a fell during the 80s, I can't keep them all straight. But I know Tammy Faye is dead.
Is she?
I hope she is.
Hey, that's not nice.
Well, I mean, there was a reason why she had to put makeup on with a spatula.
I think it was. Wasn't it a style then?
Oh, that wasn't a style. There was pastels were style.
Ah, come on.
Putting it on with a spatula. But anyways, we're getting away from the point of this entire episode. Was these people believed in keeping a religion and their religion and their group a pure group based upon these early teachings from the LDS Church. And I want to make it perfectly clear, though, to you and to everybody else out there. When it comes to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they've done a lot to try to integrate other people of other ethnicities into the church. And everything from the outside looking in, since obviously I'm not a member, they have done a lot to make sure and make amends for what they did in during that period of time, and they've made strides to make sure that people are integrated, that that everybody's treated equally, because their overall goal is to not only baptize everyone on earth.
I thought
but
that was a myth.
no, it's
They're really trying to baptize
every single person on earth, alive or past. If they can find your grave, they'll come into the cemetery and they'll baptize every single grave. They don't care what religion you are. That's beside the point. But they want to baptize everyone on earth because they believe that unless you're baptized by their church, you can't get into the holy land of secret underwear.
Well, on the one hand, I find that very, very creepy. On the other hand, it's, pretty nice. I mean, I guess if they really believe that, they're just trying to help people out. Don't baptize me, but thanks for thinking of me.
I was going to say is there are a lot of good people out there who are LDS members, and I'm not trying to say that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are just an evil group of religion and evil Christians, and that they are out to destroy the world. They believe in what they believe in. They're not really trying to cause any harm, but in a lot of circumstances, they are still considered a cult within themselves.
Really?
They are. Now, when it comes to the two groups that I was talking about earlier, another voice of warning on the website itself before it got scrubbed, and this is an actual quote from that website. It said, "It's clear what the Book of Mormon says, and is about keeping our race pure."
Oh, that's gross. I was talking about the quote, not the...
yeah.
The coffee's delicious.
I was like, well, I
The
don't know what
racism is
happened to your
gross.
coffee. Preparing people. During an interview this past year, after Lori's children were found deceased there on Chad's farm, they had an interview. One of their leaders, or she said that she is a leader of the Preparing People group. She had an interview with Morgan Lowe of CBS Channel 5, who is also a writer for azfamily.com. And this is an exact quote of what she said to Morgan Lowe. "Chad and Lori are true Mormons. They do exactly what Joseph Smith wants them to prepare for. They stockpile food, work on the translations of the ancient texts, and keep their inner circle pure." That is from the group that directly follows Chad's beliefs and Chad's books.
I was
They
feeling
have
bad
based
for
their
Chad
entire
right up until
belief
then.
system around Christianity and what Chad has to add to that from his books.
So I'm gathering from this that Chad was also a racist POS.
You can't not draw that conclusion.
I was feeling bad for him until just now.
Lori talked about it since she was married to Joseph Ryan. She talked about the Mormon Church and the teachings and everything about it encompasses white, you know, race and the white superiority. She talked about it with a lot of people who've since left and who have commented to different reporters, especially to East Idaho News, the Associated Press, and to Dr. Christina Rossetti, and to the other newspapers out there who have been following this group for a while and their teachings, and have been kind of trying to figure out where the end of times was going to happen from. Was it going to be in Idaho? Was it going to happen in northern Utah? Because there is a very large faction of people who believe in the writings of Chad Daybell, who and the people preparing people group is in northern Utah. I mean, they have members all over the United States, but the largest gathering of them, they live in northern Utah. Now, you can't avoid this inevitable conclusion that they both believed this. They both talked about it. They both predicted it, and I was wondering when I first started coming across all these different people who talked about what they learned from Lori and what they learned from Chad, and this message of superiority of a master race, a clear, pure race. And when they started talking about it, I was like, why is this not being covered in the mainstream media? That was the first question that I had. And then I realized what was going on in the world around us right now. And how this looks in on the LDS church, and how this would look to other groups out there, especially evangelical Christians who are kind of like in this outer circle, who kind of listened to Lori and her podcast and followed her. And when you have people marching in the streets protesting for equal rights and for Black Lives Matters, the last thing you want to do is tell them that the Mormon Church and these people in who we're reporting on everything else about them. These people believed in a white master race. That would probably be right now would be the wrong time to probably publicize that.
I mean, I don't think there's a good time to publicize that.
Well, right, but it definitely wouldn't be. If you're East Idaho News, you wouldn't want to do an exclusive tonight at the 5 o'clock news hour talking about how much these people believed that they were part of the this chosen group of to lead to go to the afterlife.
Idaho has been fighting the stain of racism for decades.
Oh, yes.
Definitely would not look good.
No, it wouldn't. And that's the last thing Northern Idaho, a news agency based in Northern Idaho, or anybody wanted to do was have the entire United States turn their focus directly on them in a spotlight. So I kind of understood, when I'm researching this and talking to these different people from around the United States, and to this entire thing, I have now talked to no less than 93 different people while researching this. And in the emails that I was telling you about, that Lori and Chad were sending back and forth to each other, there were several things that Lori and Chad talked about besides the white pure race. They had started to put together a list of things that they wanted to accomplish for their inner circle, and make sure that it was part of their indoctrination, and along with things that they had planned on doing to make sure that they were protecting those who were part of their church, who were chosen to be there. They wanted to set up a security force to protect the people who were there, and to protect the people and their families of those who were going to pass through to the other side of the veil.
That's not menacing at all.
Do you understand what I mean by passing through the other side of the veil?
Yeah, the people they were going to murder.
No, or they're going to commit suicide to go through the veil.
Yeah, I remember Joestown. Well, I mean, I wasn't there. I don't
Right?
remember.
But that's the apocalyptic, like Jonestown kind of stuff that they were talking about, that they preached about within their circles.
Hey, if
And
the end of
it's
the world won't come to you, you go to the end of the world.
right. And other things that they wanted to do was put together resources for those that needed them, that were in their group. So if you needed something like, I need
that's
this
not a
or
bad
whatever.
idea.
I mean, they had some good things that they had talked about. Set up housing and support.
Eh,
So basically, a lot of this, that of those emails
I hate it when
centered
shitty
around,
people come up with good ideas.
right? But they wanted to basically set up an area there in northern Utah where like-minded people with the same views all could come together. So basically building another Jonestown,
I
there, but in northern Idaho.
wasn't going to say
That's
it.
the direction a lot of this was going. Encourage a white-only network. Transcribe correctly previous works of by Jesus Christ and Joseph Smith. Works that they believe were mistranslated.
Didn't Joseph Smith speak English?
I believe so.
Then how is this stuff
I don't know. But they wanted to work on the translation of
I mean, the works
of that and ancient texts.
Jesus, yeah, I mean, I get that. Because the Bible was what, Greek and Hebrew, so yeah, there's definitely some translation errors there. We've discussed those, the two of us in the past, but I was pretty sure Joseph Smith spoke English.
Yeah. And then blessing of those supporters who passed on. These are things that they openly talked about in their communication that they wanted to accomplish for their area as they worked towards the end of times. And there's no way to escape the actual, ending of it all. They really believed, because Chad had a vision, because God visited him, Jesus Christ visited him, and told him that he was a prophet and that he needed to write these visions down. And as he wrote them down, one of the last visions he had from Jesus was that the world was going to end on this day, and that him and Lori had been picked to lead the 144,000 from in the afterlife. So they couldn't be here after July 20th or 25th. He flip-flopped on what day exactly
Maybe it
the
was a
world
date
was going to end.
range.
Well, see, that's the way I took it too. Was he spoke of different days at several different times. He told one person one thing and told another person another thing.
So do you think? So clearly they were something about their shitty personality to gross people. Was attracted to the older, less benevolent teachings of the church. Do you think that influenced them at all?
Do I think it influenced Chad and Lori?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, most definitely. You can see where Lori, like I was telling you, one part in the early beginnings of it all, she really fixated on certain parts of the Book of Mormon and the Old Testament, and she really fixated on those parts, and she learned everything about them and memorized it completely, and then she would expand from there out. And as she expanded there out, people realized that she knows a lot about the Book of Mormon. She knows a lot about the Old Testament, and if somebody needed somebody to pray for them, then she would come to their home and pray for them. Maybe you're sick or you have cancer. She would come to your house and pray for you because you're sick and you have cancer. She would pray that you would get well. Maybe you just lost your loved one. She would come to your home and pray for you. And then, that would lead into another day, and then to another day, and maybe on the third day or the whatever, there was no set pattern, but maybe she brought you food, and then she came by to check on you again the next day, and then before you knew it, a month had passed, and she'd been coming by every day for a month, and then after you were starting to feel better, and then you were able to get back on your feet because of the tragedy that had fallen to you, that once she got you back on your feet, she would invite you to, a religious study group, and the entire thing just kept on going around.
So you kind of make it sound like she's a little predatory, like she was seeking out people in vulnerable situations to pull them towards her.
Everything about her has been predatory. From the earliest information that I've been able to find online, from her divorce degrees onwards, she's always thought that she was better than other people. Going back to her marriage with Joseph Ryan, when she had to go to court, she just said, "Screw it, I don't feel like it." She didn't want to be
you
there.
Can do that?
Oh, apparently
you can just not show up to court?
Apparently you can if you're a woman.
Who
because,
knew?
And I say that because if Joseph Ryan wouldn't have shown up for court, his ass would have been in jail. If he would have not shown up for the parent custody agreement. She didn't, and she took off to Hawaii. And she just, on a fluke, just left her kids behind and went to Hawaii. Another time, she just decided she needed religious, re-energization. So she took off and just left her kids and her husband at home and went to northern, Idaho, Utah, or someplace. I can't remember where she went exactly, but she did it for a week and then came back. Other times, she would take off and leave JJ at home and take Tylee with her, and the two of them would just leave without telling, Joseph, where she was going, or Charles when she was married to him. She did this through both of her marriages. And whenever she tried, when it was convenient for her and she needed the system, the courts, the police or whatever, great. If she didn't need them, she just ignored them. And that was, she was in contempt, like during the marriage and divorce proceedings with Joseph Ryan, she was in contempt 4 times. Just during the divorce. She just decided, I don't want to go. Or she'd show up late. Or not go to the meetings at all. And Charles tried to have her committed because she went off the rails. And have her, committed because, she was going batshit nuts with this religious thing. And she wasn't making any sense at all. And now you throw in there that Chad started telling her and teaching her about there are dark spirits and there are light spirits, and those people who are dark and who have a dark spirit are zombies. And he had an entire notebook of people's names who were zombies, and they're all the way around us and everywhere. And in the end, she was told that both of her children were zombies. And if they were dark spirits and they were zombies, there was no way for them to ever make it to the other side of the veil. And they needed to end their life on this side before they could transcend to the other side. And knowing that, and her friends knowing that, who were in this religious circle with them, who knew this months before anything happened to either one of those 2 children. And JJ, autistic and on medication, she decided, look, she tried to convince her friend, look, he's a zombie. He's a zombie because he's going nuts. Because they took him off his medication. And, a child at, 7 years of age, running around, hyperactive, and not able to verbally communicate well with others. She tells her friend, he's a zombie. Look at him. That's why I told you, they're zombies now. Because in her mind, if they were zombies, it was okay for them to die. And she knew it. And there's even a phone call where she's on the phone with one of her friends. I mean, it was Melanie Gibbs. And her daughter's in the background. And
this is why I don't watch your channel.
Yeah. Her daughter's in the background, and she says, Tylee is a zombie. And you hear Tylee in the background say, no, Mom, I'm not a zombie. And less than a month and a half later,
I'm going to go now.
I'm sorry, but yes, this is what I talk about every day.
So I won't be coming back.
But Lori and Chad had views of white superiority. They believed in it. They preached it. They, their followers then installed it in their lives. There isn't a single picture anywhere online that I know of that I could find. And the thousands of photos of both of them in their entire lives, I haven't been able to find a single picture of them with anyone of another nationality.
Well, considering what kinds of shitty people they are, I mean, that's kind of a benefit to the people they didn't inflict themselves on.
Right.
But
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my wife here on 411 Now.
not coming back. That was depressing.
Yep. Now, try making 580 videos in a year like this.
Guys, send Will some love. He's got to put up with this sad. I will use YouTube appropriate language now. I'm not going to use YouTube appropriate language. Send Will some love. He has to deal with this all the time.
I do it for you. And you. And you. And you. Stay safe out there. Until next time, everyone.